There's a relatively new approach emerging now for cloud computing service models, and that's what's known as XaaS. And the X actually stands for anything as a service. So any IT service that's hosted on a provider infrastructure can then be offered as a cloud service model. It's still remotely available over a network like any other service, so it just comes down to what kind of services you might need. And typically what you'll find under XaaS are the following: data as a service, storage as a service, communication as a service, and business processes as a service. So for data as a service, the data is available on demand and encrypted in transit. So it might be the case where you have maybe a single application or even multiple applications, but they're all accessing a single copy of maybe a database, for example. So the geographic location is irrelevant as long as there is internet connectivity with the devices that are accessing it. They all access that central copy of that data. So they can use anything, it doesn't matter, but it's that same single version of a data file that everyone is accessing. So all that is required from the perspective of a customer is simply just data. They don't need virtual machines. They don't need additional storage. They don't need websites. They just simply need access to data in a very centralized means, but accessible from anywhere. So this is where it might be useful to investigate data as a service. Now, storage as a service, a lot of document management type of companies might offer this as a service, wherein it is simply off-site data backup storage and disaster recovery. A lot of companies need, even with respect to governmental regulations or any other kind of laws that might be in place, they need to store their data off-site, somewhere other than their own organization. So if they don't have that, then of course you can subscribe to somebody else's services. You can have effectively as long a term retention as you need, but they do offer this simple storage as a service. There's a backup. You guys will have a copy for however long. So again, document management companies are good examples of those. Communication as a service, this of course is the communications infrastructure that we are all fairly familiar with, typically telcos, telephone companies. So the infrastructure is hosted on the provider equipment. We can still remotely access that infrastructure over our network, but the complex equipment setup is handled by the provider, as is fault tolerance. It's up to them to make sure they are providing us that higher level of fault tolerance. And it's pay as you go, like any kind of other subscription-based service. So voice over IP is a very good example of this. Most businesses don't have the infrastructure to implement a VoIP system. So you simply subscribe to those who do have the necessary infrastructure. And finally, business processes as a service. This is outsourced business process automation. This typically relies on the existing cloud infrastructure services such as SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, which are let's call them the standard cloud models. But the business processes are delivered over the cloud, and the complexity of those processes and their automation runs elsewhere. So this allows for a faster time to market, and any kind of regulatory compliance is still handled by the provider. So if you do have a fairly complex environment that requires a lot of automation, then this can also be provided by a cloud service model. So, again, it's up to you, of course, if you require these services, but a lot of new services are coming into the cloud environment all the time. So if it's something that you think might be too complex for your own organization to implement, then chances are you can find it as a cloud service from a provider somewhere.